At this time on the 757 at 6, we are joined by a special guest. He is the man that is the best in the business when it comes to talking college football. ESPN Insider has his outstanding publication, The Great Preseason Magazine, out. You can follow him on Twitter at Phil Steele 042. That's PhilSteele 042. And also see his website, philsteele.com. We're joined by the football forecaster extraordinaire, Phil Steele, here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Phil, how's your summer going?
You know, summer is always my fun time of the year, Matthew. I get to talk football on the radio all day long, and you guys actually get paid to do that?
I know, isn't it just it's a joy? I mean, I hear Dickie V say it with basketball, but we have the best job in the world to talk about sports and write about sports and watch sports.
I agree with you 100%. But so summer's going well, and I could take another month off till football starts. I'm enjoying my free time here.
Well, how can the folks out there, the listeners, get a copy of the magazine and see all your work?
I appreciate that. You know, you can go to Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Books A Million, CVS, Target, Walgreens, Publix, pick up a copy. 352 pages. I guarantee you there's 3 to 4 times the amount of information in the magazine as any other one. And to give you an example, we give you 2 full pages on Old Dominion. And the same amount of coverage we give you as Alabama and Clemson. So, you know, you get all 130 teams. It's like getting 130 different media guides rolled into one. And if you don't see it on the newsstand, feel free to go to the website, which is philsteele.com. That's STEELE.com. When you go there, just click on the store. Or if you want to purchase it on digital magazines, you can actually download it to your iPad or iPhone, your Android device, Kindle, or even your computer. Just go to the upper left-hand corner in digital magazines at philsteele.com.
So many different options. We'll tackle Old Dominion football as well as UVA, Virginia Tech, Liberty, Army, Navy, and more here in a bit. But, Phil, your magazine, this is the 25th Silver Anniversary college football preview, if you will. I guess the first thing is, did you ever envision it becoming this big? And what was the first major breakthrough for you from a national standpoint when you look back at it?
Yeah, no, I had no vision at all when it came to the magazine. I was just compiling information on pages for my football newsletter that I was writing, and I needed to compile all the information, so we had it all down on these sheets for each team, and somebody said, why don't you turn that into a magazine? So I contacted Joe DePopolo over at Game Plan, and he got me into the magazine business. Back then there was about 26 magazines on the shelf for college football, and for me the main thing was we put so much information on the pages, I just needed to get it in people's hands. So the first year we had light distribution, but everybody that bought a copy needed to have it the next year, and that's why we've really grown. It's sort of like people refer to it as the college football Bible because it's got so much information in it, and it stays on your coffee table all year. The pages get dog-eared and torn by the end of the season. So it's just one of those things where we had to get in people's hands, and once it started getting in people's hands, then we've just grown our circulation each and every year.
It is funny you said it because I remember getting the first few copies, and the front cover and back cover have torn up so many times I've opened it. So you're absolutely right, Phil.
No, I agree with you, and that's why a lot of folks nowadays, they get the put on their iPad or iPhone as well, so it travels with them easier.
Yes.
And it saves a little wear and tear on the pages.
Absolutely. We're talking with the college football guru himself, Phil Steele, here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1, your flagship home for Old Dominion football. And, Phil, I know you've chatted quite a bit over the years with Bobby Wilder, and they started football just a decade ago at ODU, got the signature win over Virginia Tech, yet they've been able to go to a bowl game the last couple of years here. The schedule sets up where most of their winnable games look to be at home and challenging games on the road. Do you view it the same way?
I do, and I think that the home field edge is going to be huge. And I'll tell you this, I think it was 2 years ago ESPN had me contact out to my coaches that I know and ask them for the most underrated home field edge out there, and I think ODU got about 5 votes. So a lot of the opposing head coaches feel ODU has an underrated home field advantage, and that's only going to be increased this year with the newer stadium. So I think that's a big plus for ODU is getting those teams like an East Carolina at home, like a Florida Atlantic at home, Charlotte at home, and hopefully it'll turn out to be more like the 2016 season when ODU went 10-3 and had a much bigger year. Question mark this year for ODU would probably be the 9 returning starters coming back. It is an inexperienced squad, but Coach Wilder went out and landed a bunch of JUCOs, 14 JUCOs coming in. So hopefully they'll adapt quickly. And I like to hire a defensive coordinator, David Blackwell. I thought he did a great job at East Carolina last year. And you wonder who's going to be this year's Nate Harvey. Who's the player that's going to emerge?
Yeah, trying to go with the JUCO model that Kansas State used so successfully under Bill Snyder. As we turn the page to UVA, Phil, they got that blowout win in the bowl game over South Carolina. Can one such as that over an SEC school carry over to this season, or do you like to wipe the slate clean and don't see much of that being a turnover to the next year?
No, I think there definitely is a carryover. I think Virginia, first of all, getting invited to a bowl was big because you benefit from the bowl practices. And, UVA hadn't been to a bowl game in a year. Since the 17 season when they went 6-7, but they came off a 49-7 blowout loss. I think they used that as motivation, and it helped a lot. I was surprised they shut out South Carolina, and I think the defense is going to come into this season with a lot of confidence. 8 starters are back on the defensive side of the ball, but the main thing is getting Bryce Perkins back, because let's face it, he's a straw that stirs the drink on the offense. 923 rush yards, 25-9 ratio last year. He's got a player to watch. I think will really emerge at receiver is probably Deshaun Brissett, and I think he's going to step in and have a big year. Joe Reed is dynamic as well. So this is a Virginia team that I think some are going to be picking to win the ACC Coastal, and they go from being a team that pretty much everybody, including myself, picked last in the Coastal last year to one that's going to be one of the preseason favorites.
The in-state rival that has had a lot of success, dominating UVA over the years, Virginia Tech. I know you are very high on them being much improved with longtime successful coordinator Bud Foster. They bring back practically the entire defense. They were very young there. If there's a game, Phil, that you're circling the most with the Hokies in terms of this is going to be telling for them, what would that game be? And then also in regards to the unit that's going to be most telling if Virginia Tech can get to the ACC title game come December.
Excellent. And, give you a little history on Virginia Tech's defense, because last year's defense was woeful. But talking to Coach Foster last spring, going over the team with him, we get to the end of the conversation. We've gone over every unit, every position, and 3-4 deep on every team. And I said, Coach, every coach out there says we're young, but you have a young defense. And we both agreed at that time that they couldn't afford to lose any of their frontline players. And then guess what? About 5 of them were gone a week or 2 into the season. And what happened was a atypical Bud Foster defense, 439 yards per game, 31 points per game, got run over for 5.5 yards per carry. Well, this year's conversation was quite a bit different. As you touched on, practically the entire defense is back. This is going to be your typical Virginia Tech defense, and I think that's a unit that's going to tell whether or not VT's there. If they play defense anything like last year, they're in trouble. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it'll be a much improved defense, and that's going to be a big plus. Probably the 2 games I look at for VT early on would be the Boston College game in the opener. That is going to be a tough test. It's on the road. It's the first game of the season. A win there would give Virginia Tech a lot of confidence. And then I'm going to go to week 5 when they travel to face Miami and Florida on the road. Miami's off a bye, which is a nice advantage to have. But if Virginia Tech and Miami, I think, might just be playing right there, for the ACC Coastal Championship, because very high on Miami. So how they do against BC and Miami, which are 2 of the first 3 ACC games, probably determine it.
We're chatting with Phil Steele, the college football forecaster extraordinaire, here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1. Go check out his website, philsteele.com. Follow him on Twitter at philsteele042, and make sure you get a copy of the College Football Bible, his magazine. It is loaded with information more than any other publication out there. And Phil, it is such a big military area here in Hampton Roads with Army and Navy. Army is teetering to some on top 25 status, which to me is remarkable to think from where they were a few years back. And the Navy, I see you have as one of the more improved teams in the country. So your assessment of both Army and Navy.
Yeah, I love the job that Coach Monken is doing at Army, and the key was getting this team back to the option offense. They've run it extremely well, run it to perfection, you might say. You go back to that Oklahoma game last year. Their offense just held the ball. I think Oklahoma had 6 or 7 possessions for the entire game. They held Oklahoma to season lows in yards, season lows in points, took the game to overtime, and nearly beat a team that they had no right, talent-wise, being on the field with, but they run the option offense extremely well. And Kelvin Hopkins is back this year at QB, so the offense will be solid. Heck, they've got 3 starting offensive linemen back, which is pretty high for Army. Now, defensively, They lose their defensive coordinator this year, but I think when you look at them, they still have players like Christensen and Mike linebacker, Elijah Riley at corner. And when you look at the schedule this year, they'll be an underdog at Michigan, but heck, they were a big underdog at Oklahoma last year. Probably be possibly an underdog at Hawaii. And the Navy game, they were a big favorite, which is hard to believe after that long losing streak they had. So Army's going to be right near the top again. I don't know if they can match last year's 11-win total. It was a pretty special season, but they sure as heck are going to come close. So with Navy, Coach Niumatalolo does a tremendous job each and every year, and last year was just one of those years, 3-10. If it could go wrong, it went wrong for Navy. They tried different things at quarterback, moving them in and out. Now it's going to be Perry. They're going to have the offense fitted to Malcolm Perry's style, and I think you're going to see him be that dynamic player you think he can be. Overall, they're not that experienced, but they never are. 8 returning starters this year. Last year they had 9. Heck, in 2016 they had just 7 returning starters, and they went 9-5. And we look at the schedule this year, it is poised for the potential of a bounce back. They host Holy Cross, East Carolina early. They get Air Force at home. Tulsa's a winnable game on the road. South Florida at home. They almost beat them last year. Connecticut at home. SMU at home. So to make my most improved list, I have to think you're going to a bowl game. I've got them on my most improved list, and I do think Navy gets back to a bowl, and I think the Army game will be the usual competitive, down-to-the-wire game at the end of the season.
One more team I want to touch on before we look at a couple of overview storylines and finish up here with Phil Steele. We hit on the FBS's in-state with Old Dominion and UVA and Virginia Tech here in the Commonwealth. One more, that's Liberty under Hugh Freeze, former Ole Miss coach. They've hit the ground running and brought in some highly rated recruits, Phil, including some here from the 757 area code. Your take on the Flames for this season?
Yeah, and I thought that last year, Turner Gill did a great job getting the team to 6-6 in its first-year transition, going from the FBS or FCS to FBS. And Hugh Freeze steps into a pretty good situation. He's got 8 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. The key to me is going to be quarterback Stephen Calvert. I mean, 2 years ago, Stephen Calvert looked great. He had 29 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. Last year, how about 21 touchdowns, 18 interceptions? And they still only had 6 losses last year. Usually when you toss 18 interceptions like that, you're in big trouble. Now, he'll be pushed by Jonathan Bennett, the true frosh, but if Calvert can return to form, then this team's got some potential. And as you mentioned, Freeze has been bringing in upgraded recruits this year. It's tough being an independent. You have to play an independent type of schedule, but this team is capable of getting there. Early on, they need to beat Buffalo. I think that's going to be one of the key games for Liberty this year. New Mexico, 2 games later, both at home. But this team has the potential to get back to being a bowl, and I think Coach Hugh Freeze steps into a pretty good situation.
Phil, I love in the magazine where you have the photo with all the televisions, and you watch probably more football than anyone in America. But I want to know, what's the one game that Phil is most looking forward to seeing as the college football season gets underway?
I'm going to go with a game from week 2 because I really want to know about these teams. It's Texas and LSU. The last time we saw Texas, they were knocking off Georgia. LSU is a team that's loaded. Now, LSU, I feel, has more talent, but the game's in Texas, and Tom Herman's tremendous as an underdog. So I'm really looking forward to seeing LSU at Texas week 2.
And the other thing I want to hit on before we finish up here, Phil, everybody loves the big surprise, the underdog, the upset. If you had to circle a couple of games to watch out for, not necessarily where Phil's calling for the upset, where we could have that first colossal upset of the season, where you might be looking?
Well, you always have to look at the Clemson-Syracuse matchup for the last 2 years. Syracuse beat them at home in the Carrier Dome, and last year, you look at that game, and in the fourth quarter, Syracuse up by 2 scores on the road in Death Valley as a 4-touchdown underdog. And if a third-string quarterback doesn't convert on 4th and 10 on the final drive, Clemson loses that game and doesn't even get to the ACC title game. So Syracuse gets that at home. Clemson's a better team. Clemson's going to be a huge favorite, probably 18 to 21 points in the game. But I think you always have to look at that one as a possibility. And then, maybe let's take it to the Big 12, TCU against Oklahoma. This is a TCU team under Gary Patterson that always bounces back big off a losing season. They went 4-8. Next year they were 12-1, very nearly made the playoffs, 6-7, up to 11-3, where it's as high as number 4 in the country. They play Oklahoma late in the year, and it wouldn't surprise me if at that point TCU had the potential for a big upset.
I like that one. They've had some injuries the last couple of years, and they could be a lot healthier this year.
Banged-up team in the country last year.
Yeah, very much so, and that could be a good recipe with Patterson being such a veteran coach. Phil, always a pleasure. Again, one more time for the fans out there, if they want to see all the great work and subscribe to what you do, how can they do so?
I appreciate that. You're a heck of a guy, Matt, and you can get it at Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Books A Million, CVS, Target, Walgreens, Public. As mentioned, if you're an ODU fan, you got to pick up a copy. 2 full pages on Old Dominion. Same amount of coverage we give Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma, and that's on all teams. Liberty, 2 full pages right there. It's got 3 to 4 times the amount of information in any other magazine. Now, you can go to the website, which is philsteele.com, STEELE.com. When you go there, click on the store to get your hard copy, or click on digital magazines. When you click there, you can download it to your iPad, your iPhone, your Android device, Kindle, or even your own computer. So that is Phil Steele, STEELE.com, digital magazines, which is in the upper left-hand corner. And finally, give me a follow on Twitter. It's at Phil Steele 042. That's at Phil Steele 042.
Phil, always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the summer, and I'm sure we'll be in touch as the football season gets underway.
Sounds great, Matthew. Always enjoy our conversations, my friend.
You too. Thank you so much, Phil. That is Phil Steele, the college football guru himself, and ESPN Insider with us here on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1.